Hello and namaste. Welcome to another episode of the Almost Daily Zencast. It's a continuation of the previous topic, part 2, covering the growing phenomenon of the Me Too hashtag. Let's get started. First, I want to once again acknowledge that this is a very sensitive subject and that it's difficult for people to process. It's challenging to talk about. And there are no easy paths through this landmines of sexual caveats, sexual danger, sexual content. So please understand that I'm trying to approach this with respect, both for those who have lived through some traumatic experience and for those who are expressing their free speech. Those two groups are not mutually exclusive. They are not mutually exclusive. I did not do my vocal warm-ups today. But they're not also, while those two broad categories don't exclude one another in terms of who's out there, doing that, they also don't mutually include in perfect and harmonious ways. I want to say that as a man, my feelings on this subject are as complex and confused as anybody else's, I'm sure, I think. Because, as I talked about in the first part of the episode, none of us escaped the endless bombardment of social conditioning that has led us to this historical moment where our society is just riddled with sexual misconduct at all levels and at all intensities, at various intensities. And it's not an accident, I don't think. Alright, given that, I wanted to touch on a few posts. I've anonymized them. I'm not going to indicate who posted them, and I'm going to sort of summarize them as I comment. I don't mean any disrespect. I just, because of the nature of this subject, I don't want to cause anyone any emotional discomfort. But I do want to honor their statements and share them. So if you're someone in my social media circles and you happen to be listening and you happen to recognize, please forgive me. And I hope that I handle what you posted with respect in terms of trying to share it with my audience without causing you personal, discomfort. The first one I want to read or summarize, I guess, is from a male social media acquaintance connection. This is a guy that I have known in real life in the past. We don't hang out. We're not super close friends or anything. But I think that I can say, in all honesty, that on the few occasions that we did spend time together, we worked together on some projects, that I thought he was an upstanding and quality human being, and that I identified with him, as a good person, as a cool person. That we never did become friends, but that's besides the point. He opens his post from a few days ago with, "I hear you, I see you, I believe you, and I am complicit." That's intense and bold, and honestly, I think it's the kind of honesty that all of us have to step up to. He goes on to talk about, in the wake of the Me Too hashtag movement, he's been spending time reflecting on his own past experiences, choices, and the role he may have played in perpetuating what is known in our society as rape culture. He acknowledges that he can think of times, he can recall times that he's witnessed harassment and did not speak up. He can recall times that he doubted the testimony of a given individual female, the story of harassments, being shared. He himself acknowledges that he's not always treated women with the respect that they deserve. He can think of times where he acknowledges that his behavior, despite his feeling or intent or frame of mind, may have caused women to feel less safe, or a woman to feel less safe. I honor his sharing, and he goes on and talks a lot more about other stuff, but I want to pause there and honor that sharing and that acknowledgement, that honesty and that bravery, because honestly, looking back, growing up, it was pervasive. And I think the only way we'll ever fix it, the problem, the gender bias, to give it one possible label, is if we all, men and women, regardless of identity, if we all step up to the public space, the shared public space, sometimes, called the discourse, the public discourse, and acknowledge that we have, as members of society, allowed our society kind of just, not all of us, some of us have stood opposed to it, right? Some people have stood opposed to the hypersexualization of our society. And it's not something that just happened, and you can't pin it on any one person or any one industry, but that it's a problem that runs so far back and so far deep that growing up as an individual, regardless of time and history, I'm sure most men, most boys growing up accepted and internalized a set of social norms or social conditioning precepts that encouraged them to consciously or unconsciously think, decide, and behave with a sort of male entitlement to sexual access with women. And the primary sort of deciding factor in this guy psychology that gets passed on from men to men, not necessarily father to son, mind you, right? So we can't go on a rampage to hate all parents. It's not a parenting critique that I'm trying to make. This is a society critique. This is a species-wide statement that we perpetuate consciously and, more importantly, unconsciously. Norms that are communicated, because let's be honest, gentlemen, there's a sort of behind closed doors, only amongst males kind of language, code, vocabulary. There's a way of expressing oneself that is genuinely accepted as normal and in many subcultures encouraged. If we're going to fix that, we all have to own up that we all experienced that. We all entertained it at some point and allowed it to influence us, and that we as individual men and as a society of men need to take on the responsibility of reorganizing what man culture is. And likewise, and not in a pejorative way, that women can and could take this opportunity to rethink, recalibrate, as they have already done, right? There's society, and then there's feminism and its various sort of sister philosophies. I can't speak for women, but I do applaud it when men can, as my friend here that I'm sort of picking on acknowledges it, that it takes a lot of bravery, a lot of strength, a lot of courage for any woman, all women, to share their stories. And that, of course, for every one that's shared, there's probably many who have chosen not to share. And this is a beautiful thing. He realizes that just being born a woman in our society requires that individual a lifetime, to express a lifetime of bravery in the face of the sort of cultural norms that men allow themselves to behave in. He calls out the hypocrisy that men are not generally stepping up to this or even expected to do this sort of same thing. And that oftentimes men, perpetrators of minor or, of course, massive scale sexual harassment or other offenses often do nothing at all or suffer no punishment or, make no amends, make no attempt to even acknowledge. I want to quote this particular sentence directly because, mind you, when I met him, this guy didn't seem like a predator. This guy didn't seem like a player. This guy didn't seem like... I don't know him, right? That's the other thing, is that we know each other, but we don't know each other. I don't know what he does behind closed doors, and it's none of my business. But likewise, he's stepping up to the public discourse to own up. And he says, I quote directly, "This is a problem that men like me helped create and that men like me need to fix." We have to help each other, guys. Educate each other, force each other to see more clearly. Help each other see more clearly. Force is a bit strong. And I love the fact that he closes with this. Always, always, always listening to women. Doesn't that hit just a massive cultural gong? I don't have my meditation bell. I packed it away because I'm going on a road trip, but it's neither here nor there. Men listening, or more accurately, not listening to women is a stereotype, a cliche, an archetype, a societal norm so intense that, our culture has already regurgitated back at itself. I don't want to call it nonsense. I haven't read the book, but men are from Mars, women are from Venus. We've just embraced this differential, this false binary, this segregation, this mental segregation. That men and women can't comprehend each other, therefore, if we don't really listen to each other, whatever. Even at the most benign level, because let's be fair, there are plenty of men who've never raped another woman. There are plenty of men who have openly stood up to other guys for the way they speak. Plenty of people who have been quiet, unsung heroes in being decent, adequate, great, amazing allies. We've all had our moments. Inspired by my friend, I don't want to step up to the mic. I don't want to be accused of just virtue signaling. There are women in my past that probably don't like me very much. And honestly, our society and our culture, dating culture is so weird and so dishonest and so not dishonest, because not that, I don't think I ever lied to anybody about anything. But maybe I did. Maybe I just don't remember. We definitely try to impress. We try to present our best selves. We don't own up to our flaws. And we project more than we perceive clearly. I know I've certainly thought that a woman liked me and attempted to communicate to the point of being blocked, right? Of being just, I'm unmatching with you. And I've certainly painted myself into corners where my behavior was miserably less than ideal, either through alcohol, and we all know what that's like. We go to the bar and take your drink home. Not to go off on an alcohol topic, but our society has an issue there, and we've got to talk about it. But that's neither here nor there. Let's not go down that rabbit hole. We have to step up to the acknowledgement that the sort of male entitlement to sex is so pervasive that guys, and mind you, as an older man, I'm not a man of a certain age, I can now say I have enough experience to acknowledge that I'm not the guy I was in my 20s. And that now I speak to, and read the ramblings or postings of guys in their 20s about women on social media and in real life, and sometimes, I'm just blown away. But also, I comprehend it. Like, I get it. I understand why. I see the progression of our societal norms and our escalation of sexualization, of hypersexualization of ourselves, of our products, of each other, of our lifestyles. It's all hypersexual. And like I said in the first segment, sex is supposed to be something magical, beautiful, sacred, healing, not petty and commodified and about entitlement. I want to read something now from a female social media acquaintance and sort of generalize it and share what she had to share about stuff. I think the opening statement is so accurate and clear that I just need to quote it directly. So forgive me, my friend, I hope this doesn't cause you anxiety. Until we realize, and this is a woman speaking, until we realize that our sexual energy is our most powerful energy, able to create or destroy, and treat it as a powerful and sacred act that it is, we will continue to see much depravity. And that's a challenging balance to strike, isn't it? Why do we have the societal norms that we do, the oppression, the attitude, the simultaneous sense of we must control this and also we must let it loose? Our society is drawn, it seems, to extremist pendulum swings, both at the micro and at the macro level, and especially out here in the United States, we have had such self-repression of this primary, important, critical for life, category of behavior, of actions. And such an absent-minded, we don't want to look it in the face, especially when it comes to how to pass on information, pass forward information, teach, the never-ending wave of young people that undeniably approach puberty and experience deep impulses that nature's trying to, utilize to ensure the perpetuation of the species. So, I agree with my friend in her following statement that oppressing or repressing or trying to control sex is just as unhealthy and bad as the over liberal or hyper use or utilization of sex, or the misuse, as she puts it, of sex. Neither of those two extremes will render good results. She goes on to talk about the fact that this energy, this sexual energy, this organic, natural phenomena, that indeed, I mean, even the most mundane analysis of it is, you have to admit, it's kind of at least awe-inspiring, if not outright magical. Two people can do one sweaty, sport-like activity that's very intimate and fun, and then produce another person out of it. Sidebar, before I continue with what my friend's point here is, and this is funny because it's sort of part of the absurdity of my birthday post. For those who don't know, on Facebook primarily, because I don't have time to do all social media platforms, and they don't all have the handy birthday thing. But when every day I get up, it's like a part of my ritual, and I check Facebook and I go, whose birthday is it? And I post at them a little cut and paste thing with a link to a video, a little slideshow that I made, pointing out what an amazing miracle it is, and what an intriguing bit of evidence it is for the fractal nature of our reality, that people come out of other people, which then produce more people. That's fractality. I don't know, how would you pronounce that? How would you conjugate fractal into the ality version of it? But fractalality? I digress. Sex and the energies involved, and I know we're leaning over into the spiritual realm, but I think it's true. I think what she's about to explain is true. It's the most powerful energy we have as individuals, as humans. Thus, it has been used against us and hidden from us. Oh boy. So, sorry, there was a pause there, a little bit of an interruption. The post goes on to read, it is the responsibility of everyone to understand and use that energy in such a way that it creates light and love. And since we collectively make up this world, I suggest we start learning about how do we use that power. And I agree, that's really, coincides, it aligns with my overall personal viewpoint, which I'm trying to advocate, because it has been marginalized, right? The viewpoint that we are here to generate, create, broadcast, and emanate love. And as complicated and as taboo and as nuanced and as tricky and as delicate of a subject as it is, that's also, the most profound way to do the spiritual activity defined as broadcasting love. And that our society has maybe, as a tool of oppression, allowed really conflicting, really disturbing, really traumatic norms and conflicting attitudes and sort of unhealthy, objectifying sorts of ideas and attitudes propagate in our society in order to keep us from connecting to that energy at its most powerful way. Purely at a mundane level, most people have really weird, disconnected, unemotional, impersonal sex nowadays, and it's just mind-blowing. That development is insane, but that's normal. People sort of almost pat themselves on the back about it. And all of it, of course, as I like to point out, is a confluence of the fact that these are not all individual problems. This is a product of the fact this is a symptomology of a much deeper problem, right? As I talked about in previous episodes. And it has to do with ego, and that's something that resides within us and is shared within us all. But I digress. I'm going to move on to another one, a really eloquent one. This was posted by a friend of mine that I recently worked with on another project. Again, keeping it anonymous, but this is a male friend who I'm not entirely sure, but he's definitely a very open-minded gentleman, very thoughtful, very eloquent, very funny, and very intelligent on things. And he reposts a quote, I believe, from Carol Dial, entitled "For the Men Who Still Don't Get It." I believe that he's sharing that as a repost, right? And I apologize to Carol Dial, who for butchering that last name. But I recognize that. I didn't anonymize that name because that's I think it's a published poem that is being shared here. For all the men who still don't get it. What if all women were bigger and stronger than you and thought that they were smarter? What if women were the ones who started wars? What if too many of your friends had been raped by women wielding giant dildos and no KY jelly? What if the state trooper who pulled you over on the New Jersey Turnpike was a woman and carried a gun? What if the ability to menstruate was the prerequisite for the most high-paying jobs? What if the attractiveness to women depended on the size? What if your attractiveness to women actually depended on the size of your penis? What if every time women saw you, they'd hoot and make jerky motions with their hands? What if women were always making jokes about how ugly penises are and how bad sperm tastes? What if you had to explain what's wrong with your car to big sweaty women with greasy hands who stared at your crotch in a garage where you were surrounded by posters of naked men with hard-ons? What if men's magazines featured cover photos of 14-year-old boys with socks tucked in front of their jeans? And articles like, how to tell if your wife is unfaithful, or what your doctor won't tell you about your prostate, or the truth about impotence. What if the doctor who examined your prostate was a woman and called you honey? What if you had to inhale your boss's stale cigar breath as she insisted that sleeping with her was part of the job? What if you couldn't get away because the company dress code required you to wear shoes designed to keep you from running? What if, after all that, women still wanted you to love them? I'm not sure if that poem that my friend shared was written by the author in recent sort of post-Harvey Weinstein days, or if it's been around for a while. I am sadly ignorant of it. I've never seen it. It's the first time. But I saw it and I was moved. You know, it's like, even if you think you understand, shifting your perspective by really, really grinding into some of the mundane examples, the cliche examples. You know, one of the sad things about cliche examples is they are ultimately based on true things, right? and these things are not fancifuls. They're not what if notions. They are things that happen every hour, every day to women trying to go around with their day-to-day life. And even if they're not quote unquote stereotypically Hollywood hot, they get berated by men of all types, and most of those men aren't even like quote unquote average okay hot or cute, you know. I digress. I think that was a really beautiful statement by that author. I had to share it. I want to share another. I'm trying to dig it up. I'm trying to share another one that I tucked away, bookmarked. It's a simple statement by another male friend, someone I worked on a project with. It's a person I know personally. So if they wind up hearing this, I hope you're not offended that I'm sort of anonymizing your statement. But I applaud you for sharing it, and plenty of people saw it on your page. So. He says that all of these posts by women around him in the Me Too, that are picking up the Me Too movement, heartbreaking and eye-opening. And then he kind of makes a pledge or a vow. I will be better. I will work to help make us all better. And if I'm failing to that, please don't hesitate to let me know how I can be a better ally. Reading it, I'm wondering, I think I'm worried that I already read that in part 1, but it's a really good one, and I think it was worthy of being read. This is pervasive. Now, I've seen others, women included. I've seen men and women, and I don't really want to go to the bother of summarizing those. I'm just going to tell you in flat out. Posting borderline hate speech, just negative commentary in reactionary way against those taking on or picking up the Me Too hashtag. And I sort of pray for those folks that they might realize, maybe with a little bit of contemplation and some hindsight, that they, especially because I've seen some women posting like this, just disagreeing and arguing against it and saying that it's a waste of time, or accusing it of being. One person says it's a conspiracy and that it's nonsense and that we're all just being sheeple jumping on, and that this is as per. And I'm like, whoa. I don't know how a person gets to that conclusion, but free speech, bless them, they're allowed. I'm not trying to castigate them personally. I do hope that they have somehow in their lives an experience, nothing horrible, but rather one of those moments of sharing from someone that they know, who they trust. Because I think it's easy if you don't know anyone, even in the face of all these overwhelming evidence vis-a-vis all the posts and, of course, the reporting about these posts, because it's been in the news a lot, and I can get it. There are folks out there that are so anti-news that if it's in the news, then it's categorically rejected as fake, as false, as made up, as part of the conspiracy of the oppressors to distract and divide us. And while there is a conspiracy on the part of the oppressors to distract and divide us, sometimes real shit gets on the news, folks, because it's real, and and they got to pretend it. The news has got to cover real things too, or else their little scheme won't fly. Nuance. It's always nuance, folks. It's never black or white. So, I wanted to read this one, and I'm digging up a few. My computer bogs down if I open too many tabs. So I've got this list, and I wanted to share a couple more while I've got some time. Okay. So from a female acquaintance, sending out some love to those carrying their Me Too with them silently. In other words, to women who are not speaking up, who are not ready to share on social media, who haven't spoken to a trusted confidant, who haven't opened up about it, and are carrying that trauma and that pain within them. She wants you to know that you are loved, you are cherished, you are believed, and you do not owe your story to anyone. Apparently that was a repost on part of my friend, but yeah. And that goes to men too. I mean, men experience sexual harassment from both men and women, And in this day and age, there are women everybody can be exposed to experiencing sexual harassment from any gender. Because, like I said, it's not a gender problem. Many people call it a power problem. People in power. But guess what? People without power, with an aggressive enough sense of entitlement to some sort of gratification of vis-a-vis the engagement of the act, the Sexual Congress Act, they will manifest, sexual harassment and or worse, without any real experiencing of power themselves. It's the issue, if I may humbly suggest, is, as I always talk about, a deeper metastructural, spiritual, energetic issue, and it is species-wide. No one is truly free of it. Even those who are adamantly expressing the sensation of "I've never done anything wrong," we've somehow allowed this cultural situation to be pervasively perpetuated. All right, another female friend posts a long post where she discusses the fact that women are conditioned or taught as an act of self-preservation to divert unwanted advances, ignore them, and pretend it's not happening, as an attempt to communicate disinterest, and in hopes that anyone, the perpetrator carrying out that assault, will stop out of sort of, if they're not interested, then I'm not interested, right? And that's terrible conditioning, and it's true. Our society is riddled with all kinds of passive-aggressive conditioning. The simple, obvious example that has already been mulled over and discussed for decades in my lifetime, that, a guy who gets a lot of action is a stud, and a woman who gets a lot of action is a whore. What is that bullshit? And why have we not stamped that out? Why haven't we had us end that nonsense campaign yet? It's 2016, and we're still feeling and talking like that. And here's an important point. I want to skip ahead. Oh, no, I don't want to skip ahead. I want to read through. I want to kind of go through this all. Women, she says, we, as a woman, we are conditioned to automatically think that it's something we did. This is pervasive. And guys don't have that problem. So even if you're innocent of ever having done anything wrong, just acknowledge that you live under that privilege. And that any time you might do something wrong, you'll have that privilege. And that all of us are called to address that, not just those who did something wrong. And then that conditioning includes the package of, women have to worry about people not believing them, blaming them or their choice in wardrobe behavior, or being dismissed is not a big deal. And here's an important part. A really, I think, a critical point. And I'm going to quote it directly. I think it's that important. As a society, we fail to teach consent. What it is, how to achieve it, and in what situations it simply cannot be gained. We don't do that. And that's what I mean when I say that, like, my earliest memories of a young boy coming of age was of guys speaking about intimacy and sex as some sort of game, as some sort of manipulation, as some sort of hunting, as some sort of predatory behavior. And they were talking about it with wild, crazy, erroneous, felonious, and very inaccurate theories of their own and borrowed from others, because guys, young, ignorant, uneducated, pre-pubescent, borderline pubescent guys, spoke only to other guys about it. And ego loves it when we live in an echo chamber. Ego loves it when we believe our own nonsense instead of communicate honestly with those who are impacted by our actions and our behavior. She ends her post, which I've only sort of hit on the major themes or points on, with another vow. And I think this is the powerful place. All the doubters and haters and dissenters speaking out against the Me Too movement don't realize that this is inspiring people to change their behavior. Excuse me. Or at least live up to a better standard of decision making. On all parts. And that's why I wanted to share her vow. I vow to start with me, she says. Excuse me. I vow to step up. I vow to be a voice which teaches consent, supports women, and tells our youth, both men and women, that there is never a reason or a situation, or a context, I would add, which makes it okay. I vow never to think that it's none of my business ever again. We are in this together, and it is my business. And I wholeheartedly agree. As a guy who has failed to live up to that standard at times, and as a guy who's hurt women, and as a guy who's taken out an unjustified anger at women, who didn't live up to my expectations, even in a sort of non-sexual way. I was, as a young idiot, I was quick to judge and let my frustration cloud my communication and my judgment and just be an anger ball. And that's, never fun to admit to. That's never fun to own up to. But yeah, I think I've grown and learned, and I've certainly witnessed enough to realize that I cannot allow my past behavior to continue, or to define me, to destroy me, and that I can transcend whatever level of failure I ever was at my worst, and become a real advocate for sincerity, for truth, for real justice, and for real compassion and love amongst all human beings. Because this is indeed, my friends, while it's touchier and harder and more complicated to talk about this particular part of the lesson, this is at the very core of the cosmic lesson that we are all living through. And the path of transcendence, the path of enlightenment, begins and ends with the realization, I don't know about ends, but it begins and comes back to, recurves and returns over and over again, because it's a spiral, right? It's not a straight path from nothing, from mundane human being to enlightened master. It's not a straight line, and it's not steps up either. It's a spiral where we revisit all of the themes that are all interconnected. And guys, and to women, my sincerest apologies as someone whose ego once clouded and manipulated and occulted my speech and my ability to listen. Although, plenty of women, for those wondering if I've ever paid any penalty, plenty of women have hurt me and have used me, and I've known personally what it is to feel like a piece of meat. And I think I've in my life received my fair dose of karma payback in balance and in equation to my transgressions, because not to pat myself on the back, but I've never raped anybody. Sorry, that was weird, and I'm running out of time. I digress. I want to applaud and thank everyone out there who has shared, and I want to send love and compassion to anyone out there suffering in silence who hasn't shared. And I want to beg forgiveness to anyone who's listening who has ever been hurt by anyone, myself or any guy. As a spiritualist, we are all one. We are all the same entity in different lives. So all of us can beg forgiveness of each other, and all of us can forgive each other and heal each other, because we are all one and we are all in this together. Thanks for listening. Sorry for belaboring the point. I will move on now and present, a varied array of other subjects on my podcast. But we'll return to this, I'm sure, because it's not just going to magically go away, and I kind of think more revelations are coming in the sexual scandal department. But I'm out of time, folks. Be good humans. Peace out. And thank you for letting me ramble.